Welcome back, winners, to another episode of One Nothing Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda. David couldn't make this one, but have no fear. We're back to our old ways. We've got a pretty awful and gut-wrenching episode, but we have a little something to make that a bit more palatable. Joining us today, we have Kaydra, host of Perplexity, a mystery podcast. Hi, Kaydra.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I know we had some fun little technical difficulties earlier, but we got it figured out.
We
And
did.
yeah, it's chalking up to be a great Tuesday. We're recording on a Tuesday.
We
So
are. And of course, the one time David can't be here is when I'm like, oh, tech issues, and I can't bounce my stress off of another person. So thank you for
listen,
hanging in.
it happens to literally every podcaster. Like if you ask any podcaster about their tech issues, even like really big podcasts, they'll have like crazy stuff happen all the time. So it's
Makes me
all
so
good.
nervous. Imagine being like a big time pod and then having an issue. I would probably throw up. So I wanted to start off with asking you about the inspiration of your show and what motivated you to want to start a podcast.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by mysteries, including true crime. So I'm in more of the true crime genre, but I talk about other things as well. But I wanted it to have that opportunity to break things up, and in that I can talk about paranormal, I can talk about cryptids, dark history, because I like all of it. And also, I'm sure you know, talking about really dark stories and true crime week after week after week, it can really take a toll on mental health. And then there's also those areas of true crime. Like I believe there's a palatable way and an ethical way to consume true crime. And I feel like I'm doing that on this podcast, but I like to break things up. And I decided to start this podcast in like December 2022. I came across a podcast that I really liked. They're my friends now. I've recorded with them. It's Drinking the Kool-Aid, and they're awesome girls. And
I saw them in one of your more recent.
Yes. Yeah, they do the mysterious, and they have more of a comedy element to it, but the types of topics they cover, it really inspired me to start that for myself, and it gave me more of a clear idea of what to do. And I actually was originally going to do the podcast with one of my good friends, but she didn't have she was interested, but she didn't have the commitment to do it every week. So I don't really know what came over me and what I was anticipating, but I was just like, okay, let's just do it. And it's been a wild ride. And that was, December 2022. So we've been doing it ever since. I don't think I've missed a single week. And here we are. So
That is amazing. Very, very cool. And the name of your show is something that I'm very infatuated with because it's one of those ones it's unique but also catchy, and it like stays in your head when you hear it. How did you pick that name?
I knew, like I said, once I had the idea, like mystery, that I wanted it to have a unique name that no other podcast had. And I wanted it to be something that people would remember.
Yeah.
So I just started looking up like different words that meant mystery. And I came across perplexed. And there's another podcast called Perplexed. So I was like, okay, what about perplexity?
I love that process.
That's how it was born. Yeah.
I love that. Well, you guys have got to go check her out if you haven't already. I know you're on Apple Podcasts because that's where I find you. I'm sure you're on other networks, all of the platforms.
Oh yeah. Really anywhere you listen to podcasts. And I've had a couple times where someone was like, "Hey, I listen on this and you're not on this." And I didn't really realize. And then I would just add myself onto that platform. So I'm always open to like opening up those new places. I have like the RSS feed link and all that stuff. And I'm on YouTube as well if you prefer to see me. So yeah.
You guys should definitely see her. She's a beautiful lady, let me tell you.
So, oh my goodness.
I gotta woo you from the tech issues, No, I'm just kidding.
You're not so bad yourself.
Oh, thanks. So I do want to give you a little icebreaker question that we play here with all of our guests on the show, and it's called Red Flag, Green Flag. And the purpose of it is one thing about yourself that a stranger who doesn't otherwise know you would view as like a positive attribute, and then something that somebody would view as a not so positive. Doesn't have to be crazy in depth. It can be like, I eat mustard on my pizza. I mean, if that's your vibe, but that's a red flag to me. I don't know about you, but
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So what are your flags, Kaydra?
Okay. Yeah, I love the question. I think my green flag for people who don't really know me would be that I am pretty easygoing. Like, you'll always find me with a lot of different groups of people, and I'm always down to have a good time. Pretty like non-judgmental and open in that way. I think my red flag for people who don't know me is that I have RBF. So people often will like find me intimidating or tell me that they thought I was intimidating, and then they meet me and they're like, oh, she's actually really nice, but at rest my face can look pretty bitchy. So
Oh my gosh, that's probably one of the better flags that we've heard. I love that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, we don't have a question of the week since our last episode was a Survivor episode. So to make up for it, I had to do something else. And we're going to have a little bit of fun today with this. So with the help of Nisha from Hot Garbage True Crime Podcast, we set up a little pranky prank on Buddha, the other half of Hot Garbage. And yeah, this is how it went. So here is our prank call to Buddha. We'll be back. If you want to skip ahead, skip about 10 minutes, and we'll catch you back for the story. But I promise, this is worth it.
Hello?
Hi, is Mr. available, please?
This is he.
Hi, Mr. My name is Marisol. I'm reaching out from you from Hyundai over here. We have your vehicle in the shop, and I just wanted to reach out. We had a little bit of an incident. Just wanted to talk it over with you and take a look at some of the options that we can present.
Okay.
So,
hold on. Let me put the phone on speaker so my wife gave this deal. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
okay, I'm so sorry. As I was saying, my name is Marisol. I'm calling from down here from Hyundai. We've got your white Hyundai in the shop, your Nexo here, and my employees were engaging in a little bit of horseplay. I don't really have a real professional way of relaying this to you, but we did have an incident where an employee had drew a graphic image on the hood of your vehicle, but the material they had used, they were just horseplaying with each other, but the material they had used actually caused a corrosive effect, and it has tarnished the paint. Now, unfortunately, here at this shop, we don't do body care to this degree, and I don't have this particular color in stock. So I just wanted to reach out. We do have a sister location in Sacramento. They are willing to take on the cost of this, but unfortunately, we don't have a way to get that sent on over.
I'm sorry, who are you?
My name is Marisol. I'm coming from Hyundai about your Nexo.
Okay, what happened again?
So two of my employees were engaging in some horseplay near the vehicle, and I'm sorry, I know this is unprofessional, but they had drawn a graphic image on the hood of the vehicle to mess with the other, but the material they had used to draw the image is corrosive in nature, and they just weren't aware. So it did cause some permanent damage to the paint of the vehicle.
And this is going to be fixed without charge to me? As if your employees are messing up clients' vehicles? It makes no sense.
I do understand.
Is it going to be repaired?
I do understand the frustration, ma'am, and I do apologize. We don't do body care at this location, unfortunately. We do have a sister shop. They are in Sacramento, and they are willing to cover the cost, but I don't have a way to tow your vehicle to their shop.
Well, I'm not paying for it to get towed over there when you guys are the one that are doing this.
I do understand.
It makes absolutely no sense.
I do understand. We would be willing to settle it through with our insurance company to reimburse you for the tow. The alternative is we can send it over to a nearby, shop that specializes in body care and get it back to you, which is probably a couple days late. But because they are not a sister shop of ours, we aren't able to comp the entire cost for that. So we would only be able to really offer about 30% off that service to do it there. So I really want
I shouldn't have to pay for anything at all, regardless. I mean, I don't have money to get my car towed to another dealership when your staff is playing around. People shit.
I know this is in really poor taste, and I really hope we haven't lost any of your judgment, from our location.
It's already been dropped down because you guys have still not given me an update on my car, and it's been there for a month and a half. So I'm really already upset with you guys to begin with, and this is just taking it to a whole new level.
No, I do understand. We are overbooked in the time being, so it is, we do prefer that our team be working hands-on with the vehicle rather than maintaining communication. So I do understand the frustration with that delay.
I've had zero communication. There's no communication. I mean, an update of any sort would be nice, but I've had nothing. And apparently they have time to goof around instead of doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. If that's the case.
I do understand. We are on top of disciplinary action for the two that are involved. Unfortunately, now luckily, I don't know that many people would recognize it as a graphic image. They did draw.
It doesn't matter what kind of image it is. It shouldn't have been done, period.
I do understand.
Graphic or not.
I do understand. So I'm going to reach out here again. Like I said, if we can come up with a way to somehow get it to Sacramento, we will go ahead and cover that full repair. Otherwise, we will, work with you to find a shop that'll honor a discount and work with our insurance too.
If I'm supposed to go through honoring a discount, I'm going to sue you guys for damaging my property. Period. I shouldn't have to pay nothing.
I do understand. Well, unfortunately, in the services agreed upon, there is, the possibility that damage should occur to the vehicle while on site.
And damage my vehicle? That's in the agreement? I don't think so.
It's in the agreement that if any damage were to occur on the property, that because you have given us permission to work on the vehicle, unfortunately, legal action is not a recourse.
I gave you permission to work on my vehicle, not to damage it, playing with employees. I didn't give you permission to do that.
I understand.
That was not part of my agreement.
I know. Ma'am, you do have to understand these employees are working in the hot sun 9 hours a day, so sometimes they just need a little break from reality, if you know what I mean.
Number one, let me tell you something. I understand they're working in the hot sun. It hasn't been hot yet. We haven't even had 80 degree weather yet, so I don't care about your implications of weather. They shouldn't have been playing with clients' vehicles, period.
Okay.
If you're going to goof off with your coworker, go do it to your own vehicle.
I understand, man. There's no need to be rude.
I'm not being rude. I'm being frank and honest with you, and I would like to speak with someone above you as soon as possible.
Sure, ma'am. Well, I am, like I said, the top of customer relations. I have reached out to my general manager as well as my district. As soon as I hear back from either one of them, pardon me, I'd be more than happy to escalate this further, but as of now, I'm just going to go ahead and list that you are declining the transport to Sacramento, and we will go ahead and...
No, I'm not declining the transport. Don't list that. I did not decline that. I would rather that happen.
Okay, so are you willing to pay for the tow to Sacramento?
No, I'm not paying for anything. And you know what? I'm going to talk to corporate because I already have a customer service freaking right now with someone named Mariah, so I'm going to talk to her. With corporate. Okay. Well, we're going to go that route. Since you don't seem to be wanting to help me at all, and you don't seem to want to take the implications of your employees goofing around with clients' cars seriously, and the client should have to pay for anything, regardless of whether it's hot, 90-degree weather. They're supposed to be working. I haven't had an update on my car. My car's been there for a month and a half. I don't know what's going on. I don't know when I'm getting it back. I still have to get to and from work. I've been paying for Uber and Lyft. You guys haven't even offered me like a vehicle or anything.
Okay, well, I do have one last thing.
Don't look at me like I'm being rude when my car has been damaged through no fault of mine.
I'm sure.
And I'm going to tell that to your manager as well.
I'm sure.
Because I have not been rude to you not one time this whole time. I'm trying to get information from you.
Okay. Well, I do understand. I have one last thing that I can offer. Is Mr. still there?
It doesn't matter if he's here. Why?
I just want to make sure that I have, well, in order for me to offer, I would just like to make sure the owner of the vehicle is present.
I am the owner of the vehicle. Okay. I am present.
Okay. Well, I just want to let you know that this is a prank call set up by Buddha's friend Nisha, and your car is totally fine. I'm so sorry. I thought that Buddha was going to answer, so I'm so sorry that you got involved in this. This is Amanda, One Nothing Podcast. Your car is totally fine. For this episode's goodie box, we're giving shout outs to listeners from Albany, New York. So if you're listening from Albany, shoot us an email or a DM wherever you find us, and we'll get you a little treat going out. For the episode, we have some teaser questions that I want your opinion on, Kaydra. So my first question, do you have any kind of dangerous hobbies that you participate in or any kind of interests that would fall under like not so safe?
Oh man. I am quite boring in that regard, unfortunately. I've always envied people who are more adventurous, but I have anxiety and I'm not very brave about those kinds of things. I think like the craziest thing I've done is go ziplining, and that's pretty tame. So
Ziplining seems pretty nerve-wracking. Were you outside or were you like an inside thing when you did it?
it was outside. I have done indoor skydiving once too.
What?
Yeah, that was cool. It's like in an enclosed chamber with really intense air, and you have like an instructor with you. And so you start on the ground actually, and then it just like lifts you up into the air, and you're like in this enclosed chamber thing. So I've done that.
I've seen TikToks. It looks so fun. Was it fun?
It is fun. And then you have the instructor kind of holding on to you, and he'll help you like spin around and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
That is really
But jumping out of a plane, I definitely don't think I could do.
Well, ziplining seems pretty scary too, especially being outside. Were you high up off the ground or?
Yeah, ziplining, we were outside. I went with like one of my best friends when we were, I think, like 16, and we were in Arkansas. It was like an outdoor adventure area. So you could canoe, you could go hiking, you could zip line. And so the zip line was pretty high up, and we had like these instructor people hook us up. I remember the scariest part was we were on this really, really skinny, I don't even know, it's like a platform. So whenever you're getting ready to take off, your feet are like hanging off and you're shimmying across. So it feels like if you take one wrong step, you would fall off. And that was probably the scariest part, because like they're harnessing us up as you're on this teeny, teeny, tiny platform. So you're like, wow, I could slip right now and just die.
Yeah, that sounds kind of terrifying.
Yeah. But once you were going, it was fine. But that's probably the last time that I did anything like that. So
Gosh, that sounds really fun explaining it, but to be there, I feel like I have a thing with like flying quickly over heights. So it sounds like you were very brave to muster up to do that. So impressive. I could not.
Oh, thank you. I think it helps that I had somebody with me. Otherwise, I think I totally would have chickened out.
Yeah, I would have chickened out with or without somebody there, but I'm also a pansy. So
yeah, have you ever done anything like that?
I've not done anything like that, unfortunately. I have done I like kayak and hike and stuff like that. I don't know if I'd call that necessarily dangerous, but I don't really dabble too much in like super dangerous things unless it has to do with an animal. Like I'm probably gonna die petting something I shouldn't. But apart from that, not really too risky. I live a pretty safe life.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
We all have our temptations.
That's true. That's right. So my second question for our episode is, do you have any family traditions that you tend to practice around the holidays, and who usually organizes them if so?
Family traditions have always been on like my mom's side of the family. I don't really talk much to my dad's side. As far as like the traditions themselves go, I know like for Thanksgiving, we all like go around the table and say what we're thankful for, but I feel like a lot of families do that. We did have, this might turn into more of a tradition. We did have like a dance off.
A dance
last year. Yeah, it was pretty hilarious. It was my mom or my dad's idea. I can't remember which one, but they pulled up like this YouTube just hodgepodge of different songs to dance to, and then we had to like get up and dance, and we would always have like maybe another person with us so we didn't feel as awkward, but it was pretty fun. We just like danced around and were silly, and we just like videotaped each other and laughed at each other. So maybe we'll do that again next year.
I like that. Okay. And my third question for you, if you had to choose your last words to someone that you love, so a family member, you have like 60 seconds to say, are you more or less like, what do you think you would say? I know that's like a really loaded question without being in the moment, but are you going to just like tell them you love them? Are you going to say something that helps them feel better? Like what kind of word vomit is coming out in that 60 seconds?
Wow. I don't think you can see my face right now, but my eyes are like really wide.
She got really surprised.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a really intense question. I mean, I know we always say that it's never going to be us, or like we don't really think about that very often, but yeah, I feel like if I was about to die and my loved one was beside me, I would, depending on the situation, if it was like fast paced, I would probably just say I love you. But if it was like I'm on my deathbed, I would probably tell them like I'm thankful for them and maybe share like a memory that I have with them and then tell them I love them. But if it was like a really fast situation, I would probably just be like, I love you, or go on without me, or something like that. I'm very much like a sacrifice myself kind of person. So I feel like that might be what happens if it was more of a traumatic scenario.
Yeah. Well, that's sweet. And it's amazing that you would like take the time to put something in there thoughtful for them and not just for like you to get what you need to say out, but to actually say something meaningful that's received well in those moments. That's sweet. I know that was kind of like a loaded question, but it's relevant, I promise. I know.
Oh, I'm sure it is. My gears are turning. I'm like, what is this gonna be about? I'm excited and curious.
I'm curious to know if you're familiar with it, because the second I say the name, I'm going to ask, do you know what this is about? And I'm kind of expecting you might. And if not, I hope not, because I'd love to tell you for the first time and get like your raw reaction, but I won't be surprised because you have some really like episodes that I didn't really anticipate when going through your library. Like I saw that you covered Skinwalker Ranch, which was amazing. I'm very infatuated with like Skinwalker Ranch and Stardust Ranch. Very interested in that. And then you did a Krampus episode too, which was really cool. So I was pleasantly surprised. Not that this falls into Krampus territory, but just because of the scope of your knowledge involving your topics, I think you might have an inkling about this one. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited. Skinwalker Ranch too. It's like one of the creepiest stories I've ever heard, and it has a little bit of everything. Ugh. That was one of my most requested topics, was skinwalkers. And I was like, well, if I do skinwalkers, I have to talk about Skinwalker Ranch too. So that was my 50th episode. I was like, okay, we're going to make this a big thing and just go all out. And Krampus is a pretty creepy, intense legend too, especially to be sharing with children.
Settle in and go to sleep now, children.
Right?
Terrifying character. All right. Well, Kaydra, I don't have a picture of it because David's not here with us to show you, but we have a lovely little time machine here at One Nothing. We're going to pile into it so we can go back to January 21st of 1983. And as most of you listening know, we're just pausing here to witness the birth of a healthy brunette baby boy to parents Leon and Sherry Jones, who had a growing family in the city of Sandy, Utah. Leon and Sherry were a devout, hardworking couple, and they had named their new baby boy Johnathan Edward Jones. Is that ringing a bell?
Johnathan or John Jones definitely rings a bell.
Okay, yeah, I was like, I knew that you're going to have some kind of inkling about this. They named their baby boy Johnathan Edward, and before long, they add him as their newest addition to their family, which would end up including a total of 4 brothers and 2 sisters. The beautiful family was really big on adventuring, and they leapt at any opportunity to better their lives. And throughout the early years, the Jones family moved around and ended up about 4 hours south in the town of St. George, Utah. This is where opportunities to adventure were plentiful between the vast desert landscape, rocky, cavernous terrain. Lots to do out there for people who are kind of into the adventure lifestyle. So John grew up practicing scripture as part of his Mormon religion, and he was a member of the Latter-day Saints from early on. He went to school throughout the years, added a variety of interests to his life, including camping, reading, exploring caves, and other outdoor elements, and then basketball, like most kids. During his senior year of school at Dixie High School, he was both an Eagle Scout and held his senior class president. Everyone who knew John knew him as just a very genuinely good guy. And in 2001, he graduated from Dixie High School and immediately dove into using his newfound free time towards helping others. This meant he began to spend a great deal of time completing missionary work in his church, and actually held several leadership positions there, and would go to Ecuador to perform missionary work. So very devout, very eager to help his fellow human.
Yeah, well-rounded dude.
Yeah, sounds like a stand-up guy. Not too many of those left these days, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So following his graduation, at this point, he's 6 foot tall, about 200 pounds. John enrolls in Brigham Young University and completed prerequisites in order to fulfill his true career goal of attending medical school. And it was during his enrollment at BYU that he met Emily Peterson, and John was smitten immediately. The two fell in love, had a whirlwind romance, and after an on and off engagement that was kind of only the result of nervousness on Emily's part, the pair married in either 2003 or 2006. And I say either because there's kind of conflicting sources about when they were married. But
Sure.
Emily was from Virginia. She always mentioned, wanting to kind of be closer back home because she's out in Utah at this point. So in 2006, when John's applying to different medical schools around the country, being the devoted husband that he is, he sets his sight on a Virginia school. That was so sweet and selfless. I love a guy who will sacrifice himself for the greater good.
Yes, we love a man who can commit.
We do. We do love that. So the couple moved. John began attending his medical school there in 2007 to finish his path towards becoming a pediatric cardiologist. Again, stand-up guy. Only a year or so later, the couple welcomed the birth of their first baby, Lizzie. Little Lizzie. John never loved anything as much as he loved being a father, and each and every day he counts his blessings of his lovely family and was entertained with teaching baby Lizzie new things like learning to growl, which always brought like a laugh to the family, and just little, nuances that little children are learning at that age. And it was I know, so sweet. And it was in 2009 that Lizzie, she was about a year old, and Emily sat John down to deliver the news that she was pregnant again with what would be their second child. So elated, John plans a trip back to Utah for Thanksgiving, eager to share the news that they're awaiting their second child, who would be due in June of 2010, the following year. So they're just like, want to go back home and tell their family and have a big old holiday, a good Thanksgiving. So once John, Emily, and Lizzie arrive at the Stansbury Park home in Utah where their parents live, they settle in, they share the news of their expectancy, and the large family is just over the moon. They're so excited, and they share a few meals, catch up on some life events. But there's a main attraction of this visit, and that attraction is that Josh, one of John's older brothers, has an adventure planned for the Jones family. And it's nothing necessarily new, but on November 24th of 2009, John and 10 of his friends and family members head out to explore an area called the Nutty Putty Cave.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't figure out why his name sounded familiar, but this is on my list of topics to cover, and I've heard this story, but I'm really curious to see how you tell it. This is an insane story.
I was so waiting for the gasp that you just satisfied my soul. I was like, I know. I just had a feeling. I was like, I know she knows this.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So as someone who's not necessarily adventure inclined, I guess both of us that would go for, have you ever done any cave exploration or anything like that?
No. And after I heard this story, I watched 10 other YouTube videos about people going in caves. And I don't want to give anything away, but similar experiences to what you're going to tell here.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Yeah, this just confirmed I'm never, ever in my life doing this.
Yeah, no, definitely to that degree. I can't say that I'd be behind that. I did live in Northeast Ohio. We have an area called Nelson's Ledges, which is it's not really a cave, but there's parts of it that go underground a little bit. Nothing to that degree. But I did do that a little bit, and it was kind of neat, but it was nerve wracking because you're under potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds of just rock that can just come down at any time, I guess.
Yeah.
Haven't done too much of that myself. But for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Nutty Putty Cave, it is a hydrothermal cave situated about 60 miles south of Salt Lake City, just west of Utah Lake. And it is about a mile of caverns and chutes inside with a surface entry hole in the ground, diameter of which is no wider than your typical washing machine. It's a very tiny little thing to squeeze in through. The cave was known for and named after the soft brown clay that adorned the walls of most of the 1,400 feet, which is 430 meters for you non-American friends, of narrow chutes and passageways. This cave was discovered in 1960 and was only partially mapped. And amazingly, 5,000 people a year would come to this cave, mostly, are you ready for this? College students and Boy Scout troops.
I mean, that makes sense, honestly.
The least experienced of people into this cave.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about going into basically this is relatively unexplored, right? And in the sense that it's there's no map, so you really don't know what to expect. And I feel like there's that makes it so much more terrifying. Like you're already in this tight, wet, dark, confined space. You probably can't really look around to your surroundings much, and you have really no idea where you're going. Like I feel like it would be so disorienting.
Yeah. No, definitely. And while there was a small part of like the initial, like the main part of the cave was kind of mapped, they had done some mapping from the surface, and then people that were exploring the caves, there was definitely parts of it that were completely uncharted that, you know, nobody had ever mapped or even as far as they knew had gone through before. So absolutely right. Kind of terrifying. And then also the fact that this is John's first time in this cave. So he's not experienced with the area. He's not experienced with this particular cavern. Kind of creepy.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah. And this cave is a steady 55 degrees Fahrenheit year round, which I was going to look up the Celsius for you guys, but I think I put it in later. I did not look it up as far as this point. So like I said, it is 26-year-old John's first time exploring the cave, and he came prepared. This is not his first rodeo with exploring caves. In fact, his family had kind of grown up been doing this his whole life. He fixed his headlamp to his head, which was a rainbow-colored garment that his father had given him for previous excursions, and set the plan. I know. Set the plan with his other 10 members of the group, which included some children. And at 6 p.m. on Tuesday of that day, John steps carefully through the small opening on the ground surface and crawls inside the muddy cave. The family was intent on just exploring the entrance, which is a pretty large area you can mostly stand in. But they meandered in there a little while. The majority of the family kind of saw what they needed to see, and they went for the exit. They're like, okay, we don't need to see anything more about this. That was a quick... I already got my 10-minute reminder. Okay. I was like, that is a fat 30 minutes. So the family kind of they're looking around. They're like, okay, that's cool. We can go. But John and Josh and 2 other members of the group, they're like, you know, we have a bit more hankering. We still want a little bit more adventure. This didn't really fit the need that we had to want to kind of get out there. And about 8 p.m., they split away from the group, and they're going to look for a part of the cave that's affectionately called the birth canal, which, as you can imagine, is this teeny tiny little space that you have to squeeze yourself into that brings you into a larger kind of chute that has a turnaround. So these are all parts of the map portions of the cave, and repeated tourists over the years had frequented this so much that the rock face was actually smooth from where people had been repeatedly squeezing through this birth canal. And I looked up a video on YouTube of someone going through it. Let me just say, hell to the no. And no, no way. This thing is way too tiny.
Is it like one of those situations where they kind of have to shimmy their shoulders to 100%. Get their body to fit? Oh,
100%. No. And there's people like shoving them and like by the feet trying to give them because there's not enough room to like wiggle. Absolutely not. Let me just say right now.
Oh my God.
And you people listening, if this sounds enticing, you have some problems.
I feel like we need to do like a claustrophobe trigger warning.
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot of that going on. So yeah.
Ugh.
So John is leading the way in this little adventure. He's like, I'm going to find the birth canal. He's having the time of his life. He's exploring these different passages, and he finds a hole in the rock that's about waist high, and it's small and tight. And John pokes his head through, and he's like, oh, this is it. This is the birth canal portion. This is this tiny little thing. So we just have to squeeze through this part, and we'll make it to this wider little turnaround area. So he goes in head first, shuffling his body millimeter by millimeter, trying to squeeze through the opening. Things are pretty cramped, and he realizes pretty quickly, like, he's not in the birth canal. This is not the birth canal. It's just getting more narrow, but he sees like an area that it kind of is like a lip, and then it goes down, and he's like, oh, I can just come down here and turn around and then crawl back up. So he yells to his brother and his friends to back out of the cave so that he can come through, because he's going to need to turn around to come back out. So the 2 back out of the chute, and they're just kind of waiting at the juncture for John to kind of come out.
Sure.
So John, meanwhile, at the end of this super tight little fissure, he kind of looks down. He's like, this is for sure big enough for me to get into and turn around. This squeeze, when I say it's tight, I mean it's 10 inches high by 18 inches wide at the widest part. It's very extreme.
Oh my God.
Yeah, super.
I'm like holding my hands out and like the size. Yeah.
And he's 200 pounds. I mean, he's not like a small guy.
Right. No, and you said he's like pretty tall too, right?
6 feet. Yeah. 6 feet.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So he is confident that he just needs to make it through this little part and he'll be fine. So he sucks in his chest and kind of pushes through, and gravity helps because he's kind of at an angle, like facing downward. And he pops through the lip of the rock and into the little entry of the crevice below and slides down a little bit. And he can't go any further though. And at that point, the realization dawns on him that the chute is a dead end. This is not the birth canal at all. And there's nowhere to turn around. Yeah. So this is a completely uncharted portion of the cave system. It's referred to now as Ed's Push. And by this point, he is kind of laying on his left shoulder with his left arm tucked up underneath him. His right arm is straight behind him. So he can't really, and then gravity's pushing him down. So he doesn't have much way of wiggling out.
Oh,
He does
my God.
try. Yeah. He's trying to like shimmy a little bit. But gravity's working against him. He can't get traction to shuffle backwards. And at 8:45 p.m., he yells down the chute to his brother and friends that he is stuck. Like, wah, wah.
It's horrifying.
Very.
Well, and just the thought of like, you're like, where your friend is, you can hear him, but you know that you can't get to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's so horrifying. And like his friends must have felt so hopeless in that moment too.
Yeah. Well, initially, because Josh hadn't been through that part of the cave before, he's the 23-year-old brother. He's like, kind of thinks it's funny. He chuckles a little bit. He's like, the family has so many funny adventure stories, including the time that their own father was stuck in a cave and ended up getting himself out. So he's like, this is no different. It's just another story we can add, to tell at holidays. And so he pushes his way back into the passageway, and he notices pretty immediately, like, it's incredibly tight, like way too tight that nobody should really have tried to kind of get through that. And every inch that he's advancing along the clay-covered rocks takes considerable effort and strategy. And even he gets stuck for a few minutes, but he pushes on, calling to his brother that help is on the way. And it's not until he's able to see John's feet protruding from the rock that he's overtaken by dread, because John isn't just stuck, but he's like swallowed completely by the rock. He's wedged so tight that the entrance isn't even visible beyond his body, and only his calves and running shoes are sticking out.
Oh my God. It's reminding me of 127 Hours.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, there's like a lot of coincidences between the two stories with that. So this devout set of Mormon brothers, they try to stay calm by calling on their heavenly Father, and they start to pray, and they say, guide us as we work through this. And the boys' eyes closed tight in prayer, try to wiggle him out. Josh can just barely reach him, like he can literally touch his feet, and that's about it. But he entered feet first, so he's trying to use his feet to hook onto John's calves and pull him out. And they make a little movement, but the problem is the second Josh relieves pressure, John just slides forward again. So he's like literally hanging 70 degrees upside down in this rock.
Ugh. Yeah, and it's like wet sludge, essentially, too.
Gross, sticky, wet clay, dirty, yeah. And then it's like void of all sound and light apart from what's affixed to your face. So that the whole situation is just really creepy to me.
Yeah.
Now he tries a couple different ways to coax back up and get like an arm out to be able to get out, but he is effectively like, he's immobilized. He can't move his arms. He can't do anything. Josh begins to feel very helpless and overwhelmed, and he's in this dark, cold chute. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go back to the service and call for help. And then I'll send a friend in, keep you company. We'll wait on rescue. Everything's going to be fine. And he begins to make the arduous trip back to the entry of the big slide portion, which is like the initial entryway into the cave. So Josh explains what's happening to the rest of the family, and they call for help. Josh goes back in to trade places with his friend to keep John company until help arrives. And they talk about everything from Josh's girlfriend. They sing the hymn, How to Firm a Foundation, and they pray together again. And they say, I'm so sorry, Father. Just get me out of here. Save me from my wife and kids. This is what John is praying and pleading.
That's so sad.
Very. So, as I said, he's stuck in a very precarious position. So I'm going to send you over a couple photos in our Instagram chat that we got of like a little bit of a map on what homeboy is dealing with right now. It is not pretty. I mean, he is literally wedged in such a way. It's like trying to put a cork back in a wine bottle with the bottle being upside down. Like, it's so hard to work against gravity for that little bit.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So I'm sending over all the pictures.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, I mean, this is my other thought too. There's stories of people who have suffocated from being upside down in positions like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've heard the case of Kendrick Johnson, they allege like that's how he died. Yeah. And there's some other caving disasters that I came across where they were in this same position. That is absolutely horrifying. Yeah, he's almost completely upside down, like a full 180.
Yeah. Yep, and only his little legs and feet, and the picture of his feet sticking out, that probably gets me the most. Like, that is just the most terrifying ideation.
Well, I mean, there's literally no way to shimmy out of that either because of gravity. And then, just the tightness of the space. Yeah.
Impossible.
That's awful.
Yeah. And now at this point when he's stuck, he's between 400 and 700 feet from the entrance of the cave, which is about 120 to 150 meters, and is hanging upside down 150 feet below the ground, so 45 meters. So it's cold, it's dark, it's quiet, it probably stinks because of all the clay and the dirt. And then to make matters worse, he's underground 150 feet, 70 degrees upside down.
Hi, I'm Katie.
And I'm Kelly.
And if you're looking for a super fun, awesome podcast to listen to, check us out. All things outrageously dark, scary, beautiful, and totally true.
So about an hour later, the first of the rescuers arrive on scene, and one in particular was a petite woman by the name of Susie. And Susie was very experienced with Nutty Putty Cave. She was tiny, and she managed to squeeze in to where John was stuck. Josh, backs out of the fissure and meets Susie and directs her on where his brother's located. She's very surprised that he even made it as far into the fissure as he did, considering that even she had trouble navigating the small turns just before the dead end. But upon arrival, she's like, I don't know how we got in here. But she gets in there. She introduces herself to John, and he replies, "Hi, Susie. Thanks for coming, but I really, really want to get out of here." She reassures him that they'll get him out. And she pours a little water kind of like down his side, hoping that it runs off of his arm and that he can somehow catch some of it. I'm not sure if he got any of it, but she tries. And also on scene at the entrance of the cave is a medical expert, and he has his own list of reasons on why he's very concerned about John's well-being. And he begins to explain the urgency of the situation. So John has plenty of air. He has the potential for food and water to be brought down. And with the stable 55-degree temperature, he's not really in danger from the elements. But he is upside down at a 70-degree angle. And like you said, human body is not designed to work that way. It's designed to work upright.
Yeah.
Every function of our anatomy relies on gravity, from digestion to the blood circulating in us to our breathing, really everything. And so being upside down means your body is working against gravity. The heart has a harder time to pump fluid out of your brain, and especially difficult time sending it up to your feet when you're in that position. So naturally, fluids will start to accumulate in your lungs, capillaries will begin to leak, your circulation will slow, and eventually your systems are going to start to fail. Another concern is that with him being upside down, the toxins in his blood were accumulating the longer he was there. And so if they free him and he's got all these toxins, they could rush to his heart and kill him instantly. So, he's got a couple things going against him right now, unfortunately. And the medical expert relays all of this to the rescue team, and the pressure is on to get him out and fast. And he also mentions, he's like, I'm saying all this with a grain of salt because there's very little research on the lifespan of people that are suspended upside down. But he estimates that they have about 8 to 10 hours to work with to get John out.
Okay.
So Susie is still in there with him, and she cuts off John's pants in an effort to give him some wiggle room to see if that helps. But it really doesn't do anything. He's just squeezed in there so hard. And they talk about their faith, and they sing another hymn together and bond over their religious perspectives, although Susie had kind of fallen away from her faith a little bit. But they talk a little bit about her plans of marrying in a church and things like that. And then she tries to string some rope around his leg to try to pull him out. But what is the issue is the angle that he's at. There's a lot of sharp, jagged rocks in the way. And so the ropes are just being rubbed against the rock, creating friction, and they're breaking or snapping. And so they're like, that option doesn't work.
It's almost like a 911 dispatcher that's trying to keep someone calm in a really traumatic situation. So they're just praying and talking about things. And so it's easy for someone to say why aren't you just working on them? Right. But those are such important things to do in emergency situations, is you have to keep that person calm.
Absolutely. And he was rotating through moments of clarity where he was kind of calm, but he would also have moments of panic where he was thrashing a little bit, which wasn't helping his cause with getting unstuck. So you're absolutely right. She was just trying to be just stay calm until we figure out a solution for how to get you out. And they come up with a plan pretty quickly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drill holes in the wall of the rock, and we're going to install pulley systems and little carabiner clips. That way we can run the rope through the carabiner, which is smoother than the rock face, and potentially avoid friction and the rope breaking, and maybe be able to get some leverage to get him out.
So would this kind of be prying someone out of a car, if you will, that kind of machinery where it's it's drilling? Is it drilling towards the tunnel that he's in? Or is it like I guess, yeah, how is the drilling working? Do you know?
So they're just drilling a hole in the wall to like insert something that they can hook a carabiner on. So they're not necessarily trying to drill him out, but they're trying to install a pulley system to where they can have people holding a rope and have the ropes passing through these little carabiner clips to get him. So they can try to like
gotcha.
pull him backwards out of the hole.
Okay, so are they going to lift him from like upside, or they're trying to lift him out from where his feet are essentially?
Yeah, they're trying to like wrap him around his feet and pull him out the way he went in, like feet out first.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it seems like a pretty reliable plan at the time, and they just have to, drill holes in the rock, which are easier said than done because there's a lot of really flaky shale covering the rock. And so they have a really hard time being able to even drill into it in the first place. But they're pretty confident that they can make this work. And they have another rescuer that arrives on scene, one of the more prominent ones in this story, and his name is Ryan. Ryan appears, and Susie backs out of the cave so that he can go inside and make his way to John. And it's at this time that John is seemingly starting to suffer some kind of cognitive effects, because as soon as he comes in, he's like, Ryan, I don't want to be on my head anymore. And Ryan's like, what do you mean? Why are you on your head? And John's like, well, why did you put me here? So he's already starting to get some mental deficit where he thinks that like the rescuers put him there somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then they feed this long straw down to Ryan, Ryan feeds it down to John's mouth so he can at least get some Gatorade and get some fluids in him. So he drinks a little Gatorade and he lets him know, he's like, we're not giving up, so just bear with us. So by midnight and throughout the following day, a crowd of over 137 people join the rescue efforts, and they're making carabiners and drilling holes and bringing tools into the cave in a fight against time to get this pulley system hooked up. And by 4 p.m. that day, they managed to put about 15 carabiners in to create this line that goes to an area where people can actually pull. So they've got this like long rope interweaving through this section. Are they seriously mowing my lawn right now? Oh my God. I can't win today, man.
We've won nothing, people.
Won nothing. We have. True to the name.
Dude, we have these landscapers that come through, and I swear it's every single time that I'm recording, and they're in like those gigantic lawnmowers that you sit on, like the really loud ones, and it just drives me insane. It'll go on for at least 30 minutes. How did you hear about this story?
I have known about this one for a little while, and it was because I live on Reddit, and there's all kinds of like horrible, sad stories about like cautionary tales of things like that. And I'm big into hiking, so I'm in a lot of those hiking Reddit groups, and this one just kind of got like bled over a little bit from some cave group that was recommended, and that's where I first heard of it. So it's been a few years, but
okay.
Yeah, I want to do this one for a while. I think my lawn guy is satisfied with his work, so we'll continue.
And
scene. So while making this kind of path of carabiner hooks and rope through, there was like one section that they didn't really have a way to drill into to attach a carabiner. However, that section just so happened to have a natural little notch in the rock that allowed them to be able to affix that carabiner. So they were really lucked out. They were like, that was the one spot we couldn't drill into because of, I guess, just the space, to be able to use tools in there. And so they're like really excited. They're like, we've got everything rigged up. We're ready to go. Ryan is in there like face up against his feet, pretty much working as far in as he can to pull him out. And they get the whole team to pull. Before they start, though, John's wife, Emily, who's been up all night waiting by the phone to hear of his rescue, arrives on scene with John's mother. And yeah, so they show up. She's like, oh, he's still down there. And they're like, oh, yeah, but it's okay. We're about to pull him out now. So you arrived just in time. So what they do is they drop a telecom down to John so he can communicate with Emily. And she calls to him through the device and says, keep fighting. We're going to get you out. We got everything hooked up. And he cries back, I love you. Tell Lizzie I love her. I'm going to get out. And Ryan can tell that he's weeping for this message, like pretty hard.
Oh my God.
I know. Really sad. So everybody starts, getting in line. They got the pulley lines strung, and they begin this really slow process of hoisting John out. And when I mean slow, I mean it's like millimeter by millimeter backwards out of this hole. And they have to keep readjusting and moving and making sure that the carabiners are in place. So John actually jokes during this process, and he's like, sorry that I'm so fat, and says like if he were a few pounds lighter, he might have just slipped right through and not be in that situation. Everybody inside the cave, time is standing still. Like I said, the only light is coming from their headlamps. The only sound observable is from the rescue team and the drilling happening. And even during the day, like the rescue team had tried to chisel away at the passage to try to make the opening bigger to get him out. But in almost 2 hours of drilling, they didn't even make it 6 inches into the rock. So they were like, this is not a time, insensitive way to be able to rescue him out of the situation. So their pulley system is kind of their only Hail Mary pass that they have.
Well, and it's hard too, because obviously the time is ticking for him to be able to survive. But at the same time, if they pull him out too quickly, then that could cause him, like, his body to shut down.
Absolutely.
Because of the sudden change in gravity or movement.
And all the toxins and stuff that are building up in his blood from being upside down and his organs not able to process properly. So yeah, it's definitely horrifying. A lot of cards in the way. I did read also that around this time, like the media somehow got wind of this and was like, thought that he had gotten out, and were like, oh, it's okay, he's free. And he was still like a long way from being free.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they are making progress. Like it's inches, but they're making progress. And John is they actually get him to where he's kind of level in the hole. Like his head is almost where his feet are, and he's still kind of dangling there. But what happens is the ceiling is so low, like in that picture, that they pull him up and his feet hit the ceiling, and John explodes with pain because he hasn't had blood really go into his feet in hours at this point. So it's like pins and needles times a billion. Okay. Ryan yells to the rest of the team. He's like, hold on, give him a break, let him rest for a minute. And they try to pull again a little bit, but inch by inch, they're kind of coming upon the realization that to get him out, they're probably going to break his legs. Because there's just no angle.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking that because of the pictures. Yep. Yeah, the angle. Oh, my gosh. You're right.
So they're like, we might have to break his legs. And that causes its own set of concerns, because that could cause John to go into shock. And in his condition, the shock of a broken limb or two would also kill him. So they're like, we don't really have a great option here. So they keep trying, and they're like, we're going to just get him to wiggle himself out. And they're kind of just creating like pressure, and John's doing a lot of the wiggling to try to get himself out, but they're making progress, and they're all really, really pleased about it. And they're really excited to just get him out of that cave, as like they literally almost get him level out of the lip. And the carabiner hook that's in the natural part of the rock, where they weren't able to install a real clip, fails. And the line goes slack. The carabiner slams into Ryan, the lead rescuer's face, and knocks him out in the cave.
Oh, God.
And everybody that's pulling outside like falls. Like the line completely breaks and goes slack. This is like the most like hard to believe part of probably this whole story. So Ryan comes back too quickly, and he notices that John is plunged right back down into the hole. Like the line went thin, he went right back in. He's bleeding, he's concussed. The carabiner clip actually sliced his tongue nearly in half. So he kind of he kind of chokes out. He's like, yo, I gotta go. I'm bleeding. Like, I'm gonna send someone in. Don't worry, we're not done trying. He's like, but I gotta go. John, however, replies, and his voice is really gurgly and his breathing is kind of shallow. And he knows the time it took just to set up that pulley system and the time it's going to take to set it up again, to try again. He's like, it's going to be hours. And we don't know that he has that time. Oh, yeah. So Ryan backs out of the cave, and Leon, John's father, he climbs in to console his son. He's rotating again through little waves of common panic. And he says, Dad, I'm going to die here. I'm not coming out of here, am I? And his father's like, with a choked voice, he's like, it's okay. You just have to wait. You just have to be calm. You have to fight. And then John falls silent. So Leon wriggles out of the cave. He himself gets stuck in the process. But after about 15 minutes, he finally manages to unstick himself and gets back to the rescue team. And he tells them, he's like, he's not responding anymore. He's not talking. So they think he might have like hit his head, passed out or something. So they pass a telecom back down near John. And Emily tells him, just rest, give it a few minutes, and we're going to try again. Just rest. Emily is unfortunately met with silence, and John never replies. So shortly before midnight on Wednesday night, 27 to 28 hours after getting stuck, a rescuer climbs out of the cave and tells the group that he thinks John has passed away. He can't feel any heartbeat. He can't see any breathing. He's not hearing anything, sounds or otherwise. And they tell the rescuers, like, just go home and be with your family for Thanksgiving. And they tell the family, like, we're going to call you. We're going to figure out a way to extract his body. Just, go home and get some rest. So obviously this isn't received well, and everyone kind of panics. Like, how do you know he's dead? Because he hasn't had blood going to his feet, which is the only part you can touch, in hours. So you can't feel a pulse to begin with.
Right. That's what I was going to ask, is how do they know that he doesn't have a heartbeat?
So that's kind of a lot of the confusion around this, is that they just basically were like, well, he's not breathing and he's not talking, so he's probably dead. But they didn't really they didn't do an autopsy or any kind of formal diagnostics to determine that. But they convinced everybody to leave and go home. And they're like, we're just going to work on extracting his body. And it's a couple days of trying to figure out a way to do that before they realize like it's just not worth like putting everybody at risk to do that to get his body out. And so they call the family. They're like, what we're going to do, we're going to close the cave. We're going to blow it up and it's going to serve as his tomb forever. And they're not really pleased about that, but they also understand like they don't want all these additional people being put at risk to try to save John, who's essentially already passed at this point. Utah city leaders get some explosives and they try to set up this perimeter to prevent anyone else from getting into the cave, and they blow up the entrance of the cave and then fill it in with concrete to prevent anyone else from being able to access it. And local cavers are outraged. They're so mad about this. There's like a Facebook community page petitioning that like just close the fissure where John died, leave the rest of the cave for people who want to explore it and have mapped it, leave it open. And so they're really upset about it. But unfortunately, they just move forward with their plan. They close the entrance for Nutty Putty forever. So to this day, you can't get in there. The whole site is just a grave marker, and it serves as his final resting place. It's essentially John's tomb, and his body's still there to this day as of this recording. So Emily and Lizzie return home to their Virginia home, and they're trying to collect the pieces of their lives. And in June of the following year, she does give birth to her and John's second child, and she aptly names him Johnathan upon his birth.
Oh my gosh. I forgot she was pregnant.
Yeah. So she did remarry some years later and had another child. She mentioned to media, like she still feels like John watches over her family, that he's still a very present influence in their lives. But she got a shit ton of negativity when she came out about remarrying. So she leads a pretty private life these days. So it's like, come on.
Are you kidding?
It's been 5 years.
Wow.
I know.
The internet is such, I'm sure you know this too as a content creator. Like the internet can be such a horrible place. I cannot imagine losing my husband in such a traumatic way. And for someone who doesn't even know you on the other side of the world or whatever to accuse you of whatever, like not caring about your husband or being insensitive, like that is just such an insane and horrible thing to do. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. Yeah. Like exactly. That just makes the situation so much harder to process. And I'm sure that like she probably had similar thoughts. Like, you know, would John want me to move on? Am I making the right decision? And you have these people who don't even know you that are attacking your character. Like that's awful.
Meanwhile, you have like 2 young children to have to watch out for and plan a life.
Yeah.
Like try to move on past that. Like, why should you be miserable? Like it happened. I'm not saying don't be sad about it, but why not try to move past that and like create a new life for yourself?
Of course. Yeah. Screw really people sad. Like that.
I know. Absolutely. Yeah. You guys heard it here first. Screw you guys if you feel that way.
Screw you.
Yeah. Meanies. Gosh, leave the girl alone. So after his death, John is remembered very fondly by friends, family, members of his church. And to this day, he stands out as like one of the most unusual fatalities on record and serves as a very stark reminder to be prepared both mentally and physically when you're embarking on outdoor activities. John's death makes up just a small number of cave-related casualties, and it's estimated that in the United States, there's about 3 to 4 fatalities in caves, although half that are people that are just going in there without any gear or preparedness of any kind. So please, 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 if you're going to do something like this, cave explorations, go with someone who's experienced with the location. Don't use a map. Don't go in these uncharted areas. Don't just wing it. Don't be alone. Make sure people know where you are. And in terms of staying safe from this type of situation, there's one thing that separated John from his death and his successful rescue. And that thing was that he went in head first. Had he entered that hole feet first, his arms would have been free to pull himself. He would never have succumbed to cardiac arrest. Never, ever, ever enter a cave head first, unless you're positive of the terrain. If you are 100% sure what's on the other side, do not do it otherwise, because it's statistically, it's like the worst. This is a really generally safe activity. From what I looked up statistically, cave explorations are pretty safe compared to other methods of like outdoor entertainment or sport or what have you. Just done properly though. Like you can't just wing it and go into these situations. The same as if you were going to go diving in underwater caves. Like you just have to have the preparedness and the things that you need to do that safely, and don't just wing it, people, please. Let this be a cautionary tale.
Yes. I didn't want to give it away earlier, but I was telling you I had come across some similar stories afterwards. And one of the ones that I remember, the guy also was head first. And it was in these like it was in another country. I want to say maybe Germany. It was like a kid's birthday party place. And one of the things they had was like these tunnels, and it was supposed to simulate caving. And so, or cave exploration. And so he like went in there with his kid, this guy, and I can't remember if he exceeded the height requirement or he was just barely at the height requirement because he was, pretty big guy. And at one point he like fell head first into this like tunnel area in there, and he got stuck. And he fell in such a way that he couldn't shout for help. And so I believe his cause of death was asphyxiation.
That's really sad. Especially with his child there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe his child was in front of him and had made it out. And like the child was fine, but he passed away. And I think his family ended up suing that place too, because apparently they had like a lot of safety guidelines that they were not following properly. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
This
so
stuff happens.
No head first, people.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Please do things smart. I'm not saying go out, don't go out and like shelter yourself from the world, but just do it properly and make sure that you know what you're doing. This is not stuff to play around with, especially crawling into caves under the ground. Know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also not to say that like this was anybody's fault here, but just like being aware of your surroundings when you're in situations like this, it can save your life, even just those slight extra precautions. Because like Amanda said, this is pretty rare for things like this to happen, but it can be even rarer when you take those extra precautions. So
absolutely. One or two of experienced people, there's like 1 or 2 fatalities a year. Considering the hundreds of thousands of people that do cave exploration just in the US, those are pretty good numbers. So not good numbers, but you know what I mean. That sounded bad.
Yeah.
Only 1 or 2 people croaked. No, it's sad whenever anybody passes, but especially if it's something avoidable like this. So.
Of course.
So that is a very heartbreaking true story of John Edward Jones and how he climbed into his death at the Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. They did rule his death as a cardiac arrest, but they have no way of verifying that. Of course, there was no autopsy completed. It's really just a formality that they had to put on paper as a cause of death. There was a lot of scrutiny from the public about like how they knew he was dead. I'm sure they waited some time before blowing up the passageway, guys. I'm sure they weren't like, well, let's do it right now. But nonetheless, who knows if he was actually deceased at that time or if he had just passed out or hit his head. I mean, there's no way of knowing. So all we know now is that he did pass. Unfortunately, he did succumb to his injuries. And it's really sad. I do have an interesting, well, I don't want to say interesting. I have a relevant too cool for school fact for this one. So in the year prior to the Joneses' visit to Nutty Putty Cave, there were 2 members of a Boy Scout group that were stuck in that same chamber Ed's push. Not as far back, but they were stuck in there. And they were rescued successfully after a few hours. In all, there were 4 rescues of people who became lodged in the tight passages within the Nutty Putty Cave. So the cave was closed. They placed like a wire gate across the entry, but about 6 months prior to the Jones heading out, they reopened that section of the cave. So he literally was 6 months too late of being prevented from going into that area, which is also really sad.
Yeah, I was more familiar with the children's story, so it was really great to hear. Like, obviously it's a horrible story, but it was good to learn more about what happened to John because I really wasn't familiar with his story. I was more familiar with the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just everything involving like the hours that they put into trying to rescue him, only for that pulley system to fail and then take Ryan out as well. It just sounded like a movie. It's just really, really
so
sad
awful. Yeah.
Terrible. And then the hopelessness that you must feel as a rescuer after spending almost 24 hours rigging a line and then it fails and you know you're out of time. You don't have the time to do that. It's just really sad.
Right.
I do want to ask a little bit of a what would you do? So not that there's really much that any of us could probably do, but from a rescuer standpoint or as John yourself, is there anything that you would have maybe tried that wasn't tried in this rescue scenario?
No.
Yeah.
Honestly, as someone who like works in healthcare and has been in like level 1 trauma units, people that work in those situations know the importance, like I said, of keeping someone calm. And I think they did the best they could with that. And being able to like give him medical attention from that angle is pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
So I really don't think that there's anything else that they could have done. It sounds like they did a great job, in my opinion.
Yeah. Definitely would agree. And the fact that so many people came to rally to try to save him is really admirable. And so many people that were experienced with that cave that there were people much smaller than John that couldn't fit back there. So how he managed to get himself back there is like beyond any kind of cognitive ability of mine. I just can't. He must have just really thought that there was a turnaround up there and he just had to get through that part. And it's really, really sad.
Well, and I mean, him being at that angle like that, kind of like the guy in the other tunnel I was talking about earlier, I do kind of wonder if he fell a little bit. And I mean, it's very slick. Like he may have not intentionally gotten himself that far in.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and then going over that little lip and stuff like it. So just to try to get someone out at that angle, when they crawled in, they had kind of faculties of their legs, and now you're trying to pull someone out that really can't move their legs much. That would be really hard too.
Right. And I mean, it's hard to know what your body is, like what position or situation your body is in when you can only see in front of you.
Yeah.
100%
correct. Ugh. I did pull a few different resources for this story. I originally consulted Wikipedia that had a couple base facts, and then I cross-checked it with CNN.com. Reddit, of course, had a lot. There's a YouTube video of people exploring the cave about a year before John was there. And I can't remember the name of it, but if you look up Nutty Putty Cave Exploration, part 4 of 5, and go to the 6-minute and 31-second timestamp, it does show the entrance, the waist-high entrance that he crawled through that would end up being Ed's push where he would die. So it does show a glimpse of that. It is very, very small. I can't imagine looking at that and wanting, to explore it. But he thought he was in the wrong part. So very sad.
Was that in the picture that you sent me?
That is the surface of like to get into the Nutty Putty from the top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The video, I didn't get a screen grab of it, but it's just super, super dark. There's like 3 or 4 people. There's a girl and a couple guys, and they're exploring a cave. And I'll have to send you the link so you can see it, but it's super, super tiny. Really, really terrifying.
Yeah, the pictures of his legs
are
so upsetting. Like it's literally rock all around him. There's not even probably an inch of space between his legs.
Also, a couple other resources that I used, the Salt Lake City Tribune and the University of Virginia News both had some details. And then thank you to the alumni of Dixie High School over at the Scaluzza.com website, because they had a lot of really nice information about what he was like during his livelihood and high school years. So I appreciate that insightful glimpse into his life when he was young. Our question of the week for this episode for you guys to answer is, what is your most dangerous hobby or interest? Like, what do you enjoy that is the most terrifying, dangerous, life-threatening, whatever you want? And then your hint for episode 32, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Our last segment here before we round out is our joke of the day. Now, I had a hard time finding a good enough joke for this just because of the gravity of the situation that we spoke about, but I did manage to find a cute little adventurer joke that I just want to share.
All right.
So a young adventurer man is trekking through the deepest, darkest Amazon jungle when out of nowhere, he suddenly finds himself surrounded by 30 of the most fierce-looking tribesmen with spears, bows, and arrows, and what looks like the chief that walks right up to him. The guy looks at his situation and he cries up to the sky, "Oh God, I'm so fucked." Just then, the clouds have opened and a bright light shines down upon him, and he hears a great thunderous voice, and he says, "No, my son, you are not fucked. Pick up the large rock at your feet and strike the man in front of you with all of your might." The young man doesn't hesitate, and he follows this word to the letter. He reaches down, picks up the rock, draws back, and smacks the chief right in the head, and the chief falls backwards, dead with a plop. The tribesmen all look at the chief and then look at the young man with a total look of stunned disbelief. And then the voice from above speaks again. "There you go. Now you're fucked." I thought that was a cute little adventure joke.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Try to lift the mood a little after something so heavy as that story, but
Right.
yeah.
Gotta lift the mood a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. Can't have people like leaving the rest of the day in like a depressed. I mean, it's going to be depressing either way, but if we can avoid, take a little bit off the edge.
Right. Yeah. I think that that's good to do. I know like there's again like there's those ethical ways to consume these stories, right? But at the same time when you're talking to an audience, like we all have our own health and our mental health matters. So
Absolutely.
it's good to have that balance.
100%. And thank you for saying that and for prioritizing our own mental health, especially as podcasters. We do a lot of just learning all of these details about these really horrible, horrible cases. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, definitely a good word of advice to prioritize your own mental health. So,
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely breaks that podcasters have to take too between stories like this. And just know, guys, like when we cover stuff like this, like I know I myself, I think about these stories for weeks. And I mean, there's stories that I covered months and months and months ago, like especially the true crime ones. I constantly think about those people and like the unsolved cases that I'm just like praying that those get solved. So yeah. My thoughts are with John's family and his wife who's moved forward with her life and has, you know, two beautiful children, but that has to be so difficult. And I'm sure that she thinks about him all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she pretty much said he's still a daily presence in their lives. So you're not wrong for moving on, people. I mean, just let people live their lives and stuff like that. You know, it's not like she killed the guy. She's as much of a victim as he is.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kaydra, thank you so much for joining me. I know this one is like really disturbing and difficult to hear, but I appreciate that you took the time to be here. Could you share with our listeners just where we can find your show and how we can follow you on the socials?
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. It was a very important story to share. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok as far as socials go. It's at Perplexity Mystery Podcast. On YouTube, I am the same thing, Perplexity Mystery Podcast. And I'm pretty much on all podcast platforms, like I said. And yeah, I would love to have you in. I release new episodes every Wednesday.
I love that. She's got quite the library, you guys. I guarantee you go check it out. You're going to find something that you love. And don't forget, once you give her a listen, give her one of those beautiful 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you listen, because that really does help.
Yes, and tell me that Nothing sent you. I love hearing whenever, you know, if I'm on other podcasts, I like to know where you came from. Yeah. So I would love to know that you found me through Nothing. So
well, our girl Heather will be over to you promptly with the quickness because she always is scooping up all of her guests. So we'll at least have one for you for sure. But yeah, you guys,
that's great.
Please go check her out. She's amazing. As you can tell, much more well-spoken than I am, and she does a really great job. So please go check her out. She was wonderful, amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
It was amazing. Thank you guys all listening, and don't forget to stay alive.
Bye, everybody.
Hello, Like Mother, Like Murder listeners. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We are the hosts of Like Mother, Like Murder.
We bring you the good, the badass, and the crime.
Each week, we bring you stories from missing and murdered
to survivors and women who empower you.
And of course, some mom talk sprinkled in.
Check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Like Mother, Like Murder.
And give us a follow on social media so that we can say hi.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye.
Before we take off today, I just want to give a huge shout out to Jason Latona. Jason is our newest sponsor of One Nothing Podcast, and he has sponsored us very generously by providing us with a beautiful new laptop, new to us anyhow. It is amazing. It is what we recorded and edited this episode on, and it just gave us a level up on sound quality and our ability to edit. So I really hope it shows with this, and you guys can look forward to us continuing to improve and bring you better content and better sound, all the things. And we just really appreciate you. Thank you, Jason, again, for your very generous contribution towards One Nothing Podcast.